I don't think they quite understand what's going on right here, right now. You know, this is power personified. So I definitely
Pull up what pull up watchprophets.org and see the baptism of Nina Simone.
Woo! That would be
what-
powerful. I'd love to see that myself.
he said to see
Pull up
the baptism.
watchprophets.org, and when you get to her site under photos, when you get to her site, press the little button at the top and let her music play as you scroll.
Man.
Wow.
Nina, I've done a concert with Nina Simone. Talking about a piece of work. Woo! God. I love it in
Oh,
death.
was she? I took her out of the crazy house, man.
Well,
That's
Nina
how I
Simone,
met her.
I had to do the Matrix with Nina. She tried to throw a cognac in my face because we had a show together. I had a jazz group, and she was a featured artist at the Beacon Theater here in New York City. And David he knew I was doing this gig with Nina, so he tells me to ask Nina about his royalty because David did a poem that she sang on her album. She has an album called Emergency Ward, and she has a poem on there called Today is a Killer, and that's a poem written by David. But she, Nina could take a poem and turn it into a song in a
That's
heartbeat.
right.
And she do that. She did that with Langston Hughes poetry, and she did that with David's. And I played it on my radio station a lot because it's a monster the way she sings it, and I know David's intent when he wrote it. So David said, "Listen, man, ask her about my royalty because I haven't got no royalty check." So I said, "Sure." I really can't tell you all the rest because it's going to stop the brother from having a radio show. Because Nina came out the car, and I'm waiting backstage up the Beacon to talk to her. And I said, "Nina, I'm Abio Dune of the Last Poets. I know you know the Last Poets, blah, blah, blah." I gave her the introduction. And I said, and David, who you know, asked me about his royalty. And I'm not going to go through the rest because I want to respect the fact that she was Nina, the high priestess. But it was a fire and brimstone conversation from that moment on.
Well, bro, you got a minute? Let me tell you how I met her. Do you have enough time?
Yeah, go ahead and rock.
Do you have enough time for me to tell you how I met her? It's real quick.
Please come with it.
I was working in Watts one day in the projects, and an artist named Babatunde came through and said, "Say, man, they got Nina Simone downtown in the crazy house down there in the big general ward." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What y'all gonna do about it?" Because he came from a poverty program. And he said, "Man, we ain't getting involved in that." So after I got through work, I went home and I told my beautiful wife, highly spiritual woman, I said, "Shirley," I say, "they got Nina Simone down there at the big general on a psych ward getting ready to commit her." And my wife looked over at me and said, "What you gonna do about it?" Because I'm an Ethiopian priest. She said, "What are you gonna do about it?" I said, "What you mean?" She said, "She gonna need somebody down there to speak for her." So I got in my car and I went to Big General Hospital. And I asked, could I see Nina Simone? I got where she was and went to her ward. And they told me, they said, "Are you part of the family?" I said, "No, I'm not part of the family." They said, "Well, you can't see her." And we got in a big argument. So I went at that time, they had telephone booths. I went to the telephone booth and I called a city councilman by the name of Bob Farrell. And I told him, I said, "Bob, I'm fixing to go to jail." He said, "For what?" I said, "If they don't let me see Nina Simone, I'm going off, man, because I'm going in there to see her." He said, "Hold on, Father Auntie. Let me in." So to make a long story short, he got me in. So when I walk in, they take me to this little room. And I see Nina coming. Everybody in that place on her ward is following her. If she sit down, everybody sit down. If she got up, everybody walked with her. So anyway, they finally bring in the little room where I'm at. So when she walks in, I say, "Good morning, Mrs. Simone. How are you?" She said, "However I am, I don't want to see no goddamn preacher." I looked up at her and I said, "Miss Simone, first of all, I'm not a goddamn preacher. And sit down." That's exactly the way I said it. I said, "Sit down. These white folks is fixing to hang you." She looked at me and she sat down. But just as she sat down and we started to talk, two aides came. They said, "Excuse me, sir, Mrs. Simone has to go to a hearing. They're getting ready to commit her now." So they say she has to go to a meeting, to a hearing. So I say, I know a little about the system. I say, well, can I go as an advocate? I'm a priest. I want to go with her as an advocate. They said, okay. They went and talked and caucused, and they came back and said, you can go. So they take us into this room with the judge and all that, and we sitting around this table, the probation department, the psych department, the ward nurse, the probation department in the county of Los Angeles. We all sitting at this table, and me and asked Nina, did if she want to go with me? That's how they let me go. So anyway, we sitting at this table. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get in this conversation. Because they're talking about Nina. Each one of them, is giving their report. The probation department, the psych department, the such and such. So I keep hearing one thing. She's a danger to herself and others. So I jumped on that. I said, excuse me. I said, y'all keep saying Nina's a danger to herself and others. I turned to her. I said, Nina, you had a fight in here? She said, no, if you know it. I said, well, she was. She said, no. I said, well, who dressed you today? I dressed myself. So after a while, I turned to him and I said, I don't understand. How is she, a menace, going to be a danger to herself and others? Where? She ain't had no fights. What are you guys talking about? So the moderator, the judge, he said, sir, what would you like to do with Mrs. Simone? I said, I would like to take her to watch the Martin Luther King Hospital where some black doctors will know who she is and how important she is to our culture, tradition, and history. They said, would you like to go with him, Mrs. Simone? She said, yes. To make a long story short, that was the worst thing I ever did. I'll tell you that story later. But to make a long story short, she ended up at my home. She stayed, me and my wife left out of our bedroom, and she stayed with us for about 3 months until she got on her feet. And we had I could tell you some episodes I had with her.
You ain't got to, I know. I had a very serious experience with Nina Simone. She's a genius. She was great, but she was a piece of work. And that's right. I have a thing. I have this little doom bird where I say, appreciate the gift, but do not confuse it with the gift giver.
Well, she was a wonderful person to me. I didn't have no trouble with her when she found out that my wife was tougher than she was, and we all came from the same tribe.
Oh yeah,
she's a Pisces, I'm a Pisces, you a Pisces.
Right.
That we all related.
No, and she had real to me too because brother, she had. I knew she was gonna throw a cognac in my face. I knew it was gonna happen, and when she threw it. I did the Matrix, brother. I didn't get a drop on me. And I looked at her, I said, and I got in her face just like you. I said, stop being stupid and get on that stage and people are clapping for you. Because see, I'm worried that if she don't perform and she's the feature, it's gonna be so late until she might be the only one. And my group can't get on this is a second show. And I got at least 40 people out there that want to see me and my group. And she's gonna sit here and drink cognac and wait and go on stage when she get ready. I'm not having it. I went in her dressing room and we had a serious fight. And then the security guards tried to keep me away from her vision because they didn't want her to bring that shit up while she was on stage. Nina is a professional. She went on stage and I stood as a pillar right there in the beacon and she could see me. I was right next to the piano, but she ain't stupid. There's 2 shows and everybody here has been on stage. You all know the deal. There's a show backstage and there's a show on stage.
Well, you know what she did to me, bro. And she would cry when I would do poetry and beg me not to do certain poems. She would cry. She said, "Please, MD, don't do these poems."
Man. She got passion and love, man. And she's a Pisces with a Taurus moon.
She loved poets. She loved poets.
She has a Taurus moon, which means she's overwrought with passion. And Nina could feel that. And Andy Stroud, the guy she was married to, and understood that too. Because he was taking care of her business. And I said, man, I'm going to see you tomorrow at the show. And he says, I won't be at the show. I said, what do you mean? You handling all her business? She says, yes. She trusts me. But if I said, you got something else to do? He said, I have nothing to do. I said, tomorrow is a big show, man. How you not gonna be there? He says, you don't understand. If Nina and I are in the same place at the same time, it's going to be a physical fight.
With that, we're gonna close out with that. Now,
All
where
right,
can
bro.
y'all go? Where can y'all go to get stories about Nina Simone from both coasts? You got Jim Brown stories, Bob Marley stories, Earth, Wind and Fire, Patti LaBelle,
Let me get
Jill Scott. Yes.
my wife sang with Nina Simone. She was also a Pisces and a very powerful black woman. And I just give you that much of it. And some of you knew my wife.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
my
I'm pretty certain that she didn't flip on Ia Fulani. That's just my thoughts from from knowing Ia Fulani. That's what I would say.
yeah.
I'll just say a little bit of Nina Simone came to see our show. Felipe Felipe Kane and I were doing an off-Broadway show. She came to see our show, and after the show, she wanted to do Felipe's poem, Hey Now.
Hey now.
And I was talking to Nina, and I said, Nina, you really can't do Hey Now. I mean, you could pick out something else to do. But hey now, you're calling the gangs together. You don't know nothing about the gangs. You really should. And so that's how she ended up doing Today is a Killer on her album. And she also did Are You Ready in the Harlem
Mm.
festival, the Summer of Soul is in the movie today. But so that's, and I found Nina to be just a deeply spiritual person. And
Me
I
too.
just was moved. I was moved with love. I had a the the Sufi message of Hazrat Inayat Khan. I had about, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 volumes. I gave that to her as a gift
Wow.
because I just felt like I wanted to give her something that would uplift her spirit. But she's an example of what this society, the weight that it puts on all of us as artists. And she is so sensitive that that weight got to her.
Right.
And that's the experiences with her being admitted to
Yep. Well,
to
You
you know,
insanity
find out how
ward.
this industry makes
But
slaves.
what you say?
yeah,
I just said you find out how this industry makes slaves. The most
Oh, yeah.
slave I ever met was Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Easy. He was a wind 'em up toy. I mean, and unfortunately, I just thought it was a bad look. But he goes down in their little history book as Mr. Entertainer.
That's what he told me. I wrote a poem about him, and he sent for me when he read the poem, and I had called it Sammy. And he told me the only thing I hate about this poem, bro, he said, you caught my spirit, he said, but you called me Sammy. And I say, well, sir, that is your name, Sammy Davis. He said, no, my name is Mr. Entertainer. And I went back and wrote the poem, and Gabe brought it back to him. And that's another story if I tell you how I saw what a slave he was.